Welcome to Free Beer Friday, powered in part by Classic of Denton. Hey everybody, we are coming at you live on DentonRadio.com for Free Beer Friday at a bit of a different time than normal. I am also not Ben Easley, if you're curious about that. Today is the Holiday Lighting Festival, and part of the Holiday Lighting Festival is the legendary Wassail Fest, the biggest event pound for pound that happens here on the square in Denton. And part of that is all of these wonderful shops around town pass out wassail, which is basically just a fancy apple cider, and everybody gets to try it and vote and do all that kind of stuff. In honor of that, the Bearded Monk has got a very cool thing that they're offering. Bishop Cider will be in the house passing out their cider as the official wassail for the Bearded Monk. So today in studio we have
Joel Malone.
And Joel is the representative of Bishop Cider. It's your company, right?
Correct. My wife and I started, back in 2014.
Man, it's so cool, and we appreciate you being here in the studio, and we thought this would be a really cool way to let everybody know that that Wassail Fest was going to be happening tonight. This is an event that the Main Street Association puts on every year, or the Wassail Fest part is, and then, of course, it goes in conjunction with holiday lighting and all of that good stuff. So really super excited to get to do this and to have you guys in the studio. So thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So Bishop Cider, tell us a little bit about the history, how it got started, where it came from, all that good stuff.
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, we started in 2014, but a lot of our story was actually even before then. So my wife and I started homebrewing beer, and it's a pretty labor-intensive process, so naturally I asked her for help. And naturally she refused because she doesn't like beer. But she drank nothing but cider at the time, and I didn't think I even liked cider. There were a few on the market, and they were, as I always called them, tasting like liquid Jolly Ranchers. Mm-hmm. They were very, very sweet, sweetened with things that you don't even really want to be putting in your body, and they were all solely apple. So I didn't think I cared for it, but I did marry her, so I was like, I'll give it a shot.
Right,
so
right.
We start home making some cider. Brewing beer. It's such a cool term, brewing. Cider, right. You just make it. Like it sucks. But so we were home making some cider, doing some cider making, and so we did it, and very quickly I learned that cider can be very, very dry. It can be semi-dry, semi-sweet, and sweet. Plus, we were adding all other fruits and ingredients to it and making such a diverse spectrum and selection of cider that was unlike anything we were seeing on store shelves. So naturally, when we realized we were doing it a lot better than they were, and there was no local option, we were like, hey, let's jump in. So that brings us to the beginning of 2012 when we found our first location in the Bishop Arts District.
Love it.
So at that point, it took us about 26 months to open our doors down there. We were in our third lease. If you Google us, half of the articles are about the time before we opened because of how brutal it was fighting with the city of Dallas.
Sure.
We had a 6-month delay over a parking space.
Wow.
We had 6 spaces. They wanted us to have 7. So, I ended up leasing a space 0.9 miles away from our facility in the middle of a grocery store parking lot. And the city's like, perfect.
Awesome.
We have grease traps in our facility. I fought them on. So I spent over $200,000 on grease traps, and we have no grease because we have no food.
Yeah.
But they thought surely you made grease when you made cider. They just didn't get it.
Yeah.
But we eventually opened our doors, May of 2014. And during that time, for the next couple months while our first batches were fermenting and getting ready, we decided to carry every cider I could find in the market. Mm-hmm. So we had over 100 ciders in bottles and cans during that period of time. Mm-hmm. And it was just awesome to see kind of Dallas reassuring us of our vision, because people were coming in and they were just so stoked. Because if you were a cider drinker at the time, back at beginning of 2014, middle of 2014, you were lucky to still find one on tap anywhere you went. And if so, they would have one. You would never have any selection,
right?
Which people thought sounded normal. But, I mean, if you had one beer at every place, beer drinkers would be like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So at our place, they would have 100 different ciders. So it was really cool. And then when our first batch was ready in July of 2014, we had a giant grand opening party. This facility was 704 square feet. Bar down the middle, production was half of it. So really the spot for people was like 300 square feet. Maybe counting the bathroom. But we had almost 2,000 people show up to our party that day. So it was awesome. In the middle of July, our AC went out. It was fantastic.
I'm sure the fire marshal loved that.
Oh,
speaking
yeah,
of code enforcement.
for sure. And Mike Rawlings. All of a sudden I looked over and he was serving someone behind my bar, Dallas mayor.
Oh, no.
It was, yeah. We're going to have to keep this PG, don't I? I can't repeat what he told me that day. But anyway, so it was really cool, though. And so the next day I went out and I found our new facility, which is in the design district of Dallas. So we're down there now, which people are trying to rename it the beer district. I'm trying to push it more towards alcohol district or something like that. But we're down there with like almost across the street from Noble Ray, right down from Texas Ale Project, Petacolas Community, Four Corners,
very cool.
Pretty close to us as well. Pegasus Brewery just opened down there as well.
All of who we've had on Free Beer Friday. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
So it's really cool. And so that place is 10,000 square feet now. Well, it was. We actually just had another 7,000, so it's pretty big now. And, yeah, so we expanded there. So we've got both locations open now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Well, and you were saying the second location is you've got video games and the whole shebang, right?
For sure. Yeah, so that location is called the Cidercade. About half of it is for our production, and the other half is for the Cidercade. And in there we have 24 ciders on tap. And we have over 150 arcade games in there that are all free to play. So anything, we've got the largest pinball selection around, and anything from skee ball and basketball to all the old school retro arcades. Cool. So it's $10 to get in. All the games are free to play. So yeah,
what a blast!
It's
get
really
to go
cool.
Play all of these video games, have all this cider. Super, super cool. I love it.
Yeah.
So people always ask me, and I get curious myself because I'm not super, super clear on the differences. So you guys are only cider,
correct?
And you've got all this variety. Whereas, like you were saying, usually there's not a whole lot of variety in cider. There's one there. It's usually apple, and what you see is what you get. It's going to be like super, super sweet.
Sure.
And somebody that doesn't like beer is going to get the cider, and everybody,
Yeah.
So you were talking about how, man, you can do all these different things with cider. You can come out with all these different flavors. Can you walk us through some of the differences between beer and cider? What really is the difference there?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the core, you kind of have to go back to how alcohol is made. So yeast consumes sugar, and the byproduct is alcohol, carbon dioxide, and heat. So so for beer, that sugar is coming from the grains. It's from the malt. And for us, it's coming directly from the fruit juice. So our process is more similar to a winery. So they get all of their fruit, obviously, from grapes, and their sugar comes from the grapes. Ours primarily comes from apples. Secondarily, cider can also come from pears, but the vast majority is apple. So we're fermenting apple juice. And due to that, since there is no grain in our product whatsoever, all of our ciders are gluten-free, and cider by definition should always be gluten-free. And yeah, so that's the primary difference. So there's even legal differences there because the government, since our stuff is made with fruit juice, they see our product as wine in Texas. So our facility is actually a winery. Some states classify cider under the brewery license. So some states you'll have people like Harpoon Brewery also makes a cider, and stuff. But in Texas they separate them. So I can't make beer and breweries can't make cider.
Interesting.
Texas. Yeah,
that's cool. So breweries, all across Texas, all these craft breweries can't make ciders.
Correct.
Can you fall under both licenses? Like if you were to, if you went through that process, could you? Or when you're one, you can't be the other?
It would be a separate license. So like you could add a separate license on your facility. But a lot of times with that stuff, when you're adding additional alcohol licenses, they want like physical separation and barriers between equipment and stuff like that. So you've even got like Witherspoon Distillery out here that up north that they're over here in Louisville, and they they're a distillery, and they were adding a brewery license onto their facility, and I know that I don't know if they finished doing that or not, but I know it was a big ordeal for them.
Very cool.
Trying to appease government agencies for it.
Of course,
but
yeah. Well, and that's got to be so. That's interesting. That makes me wonder: is that why there's not as much cider selection? Because you've got all these craft brew places that are coming out with all these different varieties of beer, but they legally can't come out with more types of ciders. And so you've got this really cool niche market to come out with all these different kinds of ciders. Yeah,
we do, and still by definition, even if you look at the whole beer market, craft beer is still a fairly small segment of it.
Sure.
But if you look at the whole beer market, cider is 1% of the market. So there's still 99 beers bought out there for every one cider.
Yeah.
So, it is a small market, so I think that's why it's often overlooked. But even as you mentioned a while ago, you were like, oh, yeah, in the bar, the people that don't go for the beer, don't like beer, they buy the cider. A lot of people thought of it that way, but it's like it's not even the stepchild anymore. People realize it for what it actually is, and that's why over the past 5 or 6 years, it's been the fastest growing alcohol segment of any. segment. So the
Wow.
entire beer market's actually been shrinking, while cider's been exploding. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very fascinating. Well, we were saying before we got started, my sister has celiac, so she can't have any kind of wheat. And so when we go to bars, she always gets ciders. And a lot of people always look at it like, wait, you can't have beer, but you can have cider? I don't understand. So this makes a lot more sense, is you're truly fermenting fruit.
Exactly.
There's zero wheat in what you're doing at all.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, if there's any wheat in there whatsoever, it would have to be made in a brewery. So it's like we recently did a collaboration with Martin House, and they wanted to make an apple beer. So people call them grafts and braggots, and there aren't real distinguishing terms for them. But as soon as we were doing a collaboration together, we knew that, hey, it's ultimately going to be made in their facility kind of thing. But yeah, so never any wheat. All of our stuff is gluten-free.
Interesting.
And all of our cider is actually even vegan now. We had one that was nectar that we added honey to, some local honey to, but we don't have that one in our lineup anymore. So as of now, all of our ciders are vegan as well.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Is that uncommon for ciders to be vegan?
It just depends. I'd say most of the time they are, but it's just something that a lot of vegans don't realize that.
Sure, that there's
ciders
honey
are.
and all
Yeah.
these different kinds of things.
Sure.
Interesting. Okay, so let's walk through these a little bit. As far as, in fact, I'm going to turn these if we can so that the cameras can kind of see some of these labels because they look cool.
I like your can pun. I think it was unintentional.
Yeah, right. So let's walk through these, talk a little bit about the flavors of them, the differences of them, because I just think that's the coolest part is the variety of cider.
Sure. Yeah. So right now we operate off an interesting model. We have 4 year-round ciders right now. So this one right here is crackberry. So the crackberry is this one is a cranberry blackberry cider.
Okay.
It is it's kind of our flagship cider right now. It's about half of our sales, and it balances really well between the sweet blackberries and tart cranberries. So it's one that's won over a lot of people that didn't think they liked cider, but it's also super flavorful without being sweet. So
Yeah,
it's
and
pretty cool.
So is there any apple in that?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
It's still the majority is still apple. It's about
Okay.
80% apple.
Gotcha.
So yeah, all of these are still primarily apple.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're still getting that apple-ish flavor,
For
but
sure.
you're getting the other berries and things like that that are going to offset the flavor.
Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly. Next one to line up right here would be our apple pineapple. So this is the newest one to our lineup, and it's very pineapple forward. And for this one, we used to go with a lot more clever namings like crackberry, and we've had things like legendberry and suicider and stuff like that. For this one, we went a little more Germanic with it because if you love pineapple, you're going to absolutely love it. And if you don't care for pineapple, you're not going to like it because it tastes like pineapple. So
Awesome.
it works out perfectly because we don't waste it on people that don't like it, and
Nice.
people that do are going to be able to find it. So it's probably my favorite right now, and it's our number 2 cider, and it became
Cool.
number 2 overnight, and it looks like it might even surpass crackberry in
That's
the near
fantastic. Super cool.
future. So third one's blood orange. So blood orange, we did a small batch of it last August, and a little over a year ago, and it was a seasonal, more like a limited at the time, and it sold really, really well. It's the only time anything ever outsold crackberry when it was available. So
Wow.
due to that, after that month went by, we decided, okay, we're definitely gonna come out with it year round, and it just took us a little while, but we introduced it in August. So so it's definitely a citrus cider. It's the blood orange is a little more subtle than you would get like the pineapple and the pineapple, but it's definitely there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then the last one?
The last one is the OG. So this is a kind of a tribute to back what my wife and I were making at home in our kitchens.
Yeah.
So so it's a semi-sweet, but it is solely apple, and it's a great cider, especially if you're gonna like layer ciders or anything like that. It's also the one that like Bearded Monk's going to be making their wassail out of. They're going to be adding some spice to that one.
Oh, cool.
So it's a good one for that. If someone wanted to take a cider, throw in some cinnamon sticks, and heat it up on the stove, that'd be a perfect one for it.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. So all of these have some kind of base of apple in them. Do any ciders ever get made that don't involve apple, or is apple really a staple of cider?
So apple is probably is about 98% of cider, but the other category could be pear. So and if they're solely pear, they're usually called a perry. So most popular one in the U.S. would be Ace pear.
Gotcha.
They've
Okay.
got that one. Yep. So that's a pear cider. In Europe, you'll see a lot more pear cider. Probably about a third of ciders out there are pear. So it hasn't kind of worked its way over to America yet as much, but we'll definitely be coming out with one in the near future as well.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So why is it apple or pears? Is it just the consistency of the fruit? Is it the way you get juice out of it?
So that's a little hypothetical. My guess is probably that the fact that the juice itself is very drinkable by itself. It's not overpowering. So like you mentioned, like asking how much apple was in our crackberry. If crackberry was all cranberry or blackberry, it'd be way too thick, way too much sugar. Like so, it's a juice that stands on its own very well without being overwhelmingly sweet. So so it's a great base for making cider. And traditionally, even cider was done with different apples and stuff. And very similar with pears is that they use very, very tart, very, very acidic fruit. So the term cider apple is something that a type of apple that was only used for making hard cider. So as an example, in America, hard cider was the #1 beverage in America before Prohibition. It outpaced everything else. And people were only using cider apples that they were growing in America. But when Prohibition hit, all those cider apple orchards went out of business because there's nothing else to do with those apples. In Europe, they often call them spitting apples because they literally say if you take a bite of one, you're going to spit it right back out because they do not taste good. So after Prohibition, though, if people wanted to grow cider apples and make cider in the traditional sense, they wouldn't have had a good crop for 5 to 7 years. So it's one of those things that people decided to go the beer route instead. So right after Prohibition, we had all those beer companies emerging, and all the Germans were immigrating during Prohibition. So it was crazy because cider went from being #1 beverage to like being gone.
And it's just because it had all this momentum, and then it was going to take another 5 years for it to really be able to hit the market again. Yeah. Is that just because the apple trees need to mature? Or
yeah, pretty much. And if you plant a new orchard, it's just, due to maturity of trees and stuff, you don't get good crop for a while.
So cider was king. Cider was up here. Prohibition hits. The industry of cider goes down.
John Adams drank it every morning for breakfast.
Really?
Johnny Appleseed, the guy we're told in elementary school, was just giving people apples. He was actually giving them apples to make alcohol. But they don't tell us that in grade school. So
interesting.
We would have liked him a lot more. But yeah, so it's it's got a really cool history. They brought over apple seeds on the Mayflower to plant apple trees and make hard cider wherever they landed.
I'll be darned.
But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
for sure.
So one of the things I've thought is so cool about this show and Free Beer Friday and learning so much about the craft beer world.
I'm usually to Free Cider Friday.
Yeah, all right. Oh, big time, big time. Because I'm usually off camera, taking a look at what's going on. And one of the things that I've enjoyed so much about craft beer and home brewing and all of these kind of things is people trying to take things back to their roots. Sour beers, things like that. Trying to say, okay, a mix of two things. Of saying I'm going to do something new with beer that's never been done before, or I'm going to go back to what we used to have and love about beer, but is not on the marketplace anymore because it's not part of the commercial model.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to me to hear that cider was the deal.
Yeah, it was for sure. Yeah, it was the deal. It wasn't beer, but yeah, that was definitely more of a European thing at the time.
I'll be darned. So why do you think the two get lumped together, cider and beer? Is it just the way that they look?
Yeah, because it's marketed more like beer. ABV-wise, it's closer in line with beer. So it's, but it also depends. Cider has a lot of versatility to it because there are ciders like that can be make more like wine. So you could do much higher concentrated sugars and do higher ABV ciders that you want to age in oak for years. So those types of ciders are going to be in a large bottle sold for $30, and they're going to appeal more to the wine drinker.
Yeah.
Kind of cider we make, we tend to go for lower ABV, giving people more variety and palates that line up a lot more with the craft beer drinker. So, and at our place at the Cidercade, we have a lot more ciders that go that route. So we do a lot of dry hop ciders that are hopped higher than at hop rates higher than double IPAs and stuff on our ciders that are also finished at 10 to 12% ABV and stuff. So we have a lot of ciders that we try to make appeal to even more so the beer drinker.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Super, super interesting. Well, and I think that's the big takeaway for me is that there's so many people that just have – same thing with beer. They haven't had a craft beer experience, so they think they don't like beer.
Yeah.
They've only had, an Angry Orchard, so they think they don't like cider.
Exactly.
Whereas there's so much variety and so many things they could be enjoying. if they were to explore it a little bit. You can go down to the Bearded Monk to check out all of this incredible cider mess with Bishop Cider, as well as many others. Are there any other spots besides Bearded Monk that's holding you guys right now?
Yeah, we're often at Eastside and Oak Street.
Oh, perfect.
And we hit all the good local spots for
Love
sure.
it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, look for it. Bishop Cider. Tonight is Wassail Fest. That is why they are in the house. They are the official wassail stop for the Bearded Monk. Make sure you bop on over there and try some of this amazing stuff that's going to be spiced and all sorts of cool stuff to be more in the wassail vein. Thank you all again for watching. We always appreciate it. We normally come at you every Friday at 7 here on Free Beer Friday. We also do beer samples and all sorts of stuff. If you want to come by the Discover Denton Welcome Center, you can get samples of the beers, meet the brewers, do all that cool stuff, and then head on over to the Bearded Monk, where you can get a much bigger glass than we're able to give you here. So thank you all again for tuning in. We will see you tonight for Wassail Fest. Again, make sure you check them out, Bishop Cider over in Dallas. Thank you guys again for coming and doing this.
Thanks,
really
Jake.
do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, we're going to jump back into the music. Thanks for watching. Well, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to check out DentonRadio.com for new Denton artists and where they're playing next. While you're surfing the internet, make sure you check out our friends Classic of Denton at ClassicofDenton.com.